Hello! Today we're going to talk about the life cycle of a stateful widget in Dart. First, let's review the basics. In Flutter, as we remember from previous lessons, there are two types of widgets, stateless and stateful. A stateless widget is one that does not change over time. It is static. For example, a text or icon that doesn't change in response to user actions. On the other hand, a stateful widget is one that can change, meaning its state can undergo changes during the app's runtime. For instance, a button that changes color when pressed, or a counter that increases with each click. Each stateful widget goes through certain stages. This is its life cycle. These stages are represented by methods that are called at specific points in time. Let's look at them one by one. The first step is the creation of the state. When Flutter detects a new stateful widget on the screen, it first calls the createState method. This method creates a state object that manages the widget's state. This is the object that will track changes in the widget and contains the build method. After the state is created, the initState method is called. This method is triggered once when the widget is first initialized. You can use it to perform initial setup or preparatory actions. To do this, you need to override it. It's a void method, meaning it doesn't return anything. Typically, when you override it, you also need to call the parent class's implementation of this method using the super keyword. This ensures that the code in the parent class is executed first, followed by the code we add. For example, let's print a message to the console indicating that initState was called. After running the code, we can see the message in the console, meaning that the code in initState worked. This happens as soon as the widget is created. Now, for the most interesting part, the build method. This method is called after initState, and every time the widget needs to be displayed on the screen. Here, you describe how your widget should look. It's important to understand that this method can be called multiple times. It is triggered every time the state changes, for example, by calling setState. Let's log a message in the console every time the method is called. Running the code, we see that after initState, the build method is called. Next, let's move on to the setState method. The setState method is a key part of the stateful widget lifecycle. When something changes in the widget, for example, the value of a variable, you can call setState. This tells Flutter, hey, call, build, and update the screen. Let's call setState with an empty function whenever we tap on our container. Now, each time we press the container, we see a message in the console indicating that the build method was called. This shows that every time we update the state, it triggers the build method to redraw the widget with the new state. Next is the didUpdateWidget method. This method is called whenever the parent widget decides to update the child widget with new data. This method takes one parameter, which is the type of our widget. When we want to override this method, we should also call the implementation from the parent class and remember to pass our widget. We won't cover this method now, but we will definitely do so in future lessons when it's needed. This method is rarely overridden, so don't worry. The next method is dispose. When the widget is no longer needed and is removed from the widget tree, the dispose method is called. Here, you release resources and close anything that is no longer required. We can also override it and log something to the console. Right now, we can't simulate its call because, to trigger this method, we would need to remove the widget from the tree, for example, by navigating to another screen. Since we haven't covered navigation yet, we'll do this in future videos. Just like the previous method, we will definitely cover it when it's necessary. Don't worry, you won't miss anything. So, that was the life cycle of a stateful widget in Flutter. we reviewed each stage, from state creation to its removal. I hope it's now much clearer to you how it all works. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and see you in the next videos.